The book of Numbers isn't a very attractive portion of scripture to the casual reader. Its name can take some of the blame for that, or can the fact that it begins with a census, hence its name. But contrary to the initial appearances, this book isn't just a list of numbers and names. It is a story of life in the wilderness, a story every single one of us can relate to. Now, we're all somewhere between the promise of God and its fulfillment, and the journey isn't always easy, as you know. Where we face hardships and we wrestle with questions, complain from time to time, and wonder if we will ever get to where we are going. In other words, we are a lot like the Israelites on the way to the promised land. And as the book opens, God tells Moses to take a census, a record of all the men of fighting age. Centuries later, David would be harshly punished for taking a census, a military census, presumably because it revealed his reliance on human strength rather than God's. But in this case, God is the one ordering the count, and the result serves not only as an indication of the size of Israel's army, but also a testimony of how many Jews of real flesh and blood, people with names and personal histories, were delivered from Egypt. This is no small clan of Jacob any longer, descendants wandering through the desert. It is the making of a nation. Now, as in many other portions of the Torah, the first 5 books of the Hebrew scripture, much is made of the keeping the community pure from disease, from immorality, from cultural, casual, half-hearted worship. Even with its strange laws such as the test to determine whether a woman has committed adultery, one gets the impression that the calling of the community to be set apart is far more important than the interest of each individual. Now, these are God's people, after all, and the ones through whom he will continue to reveal himself. Now, the nation designated to serve as a priest to other nations, it has to be distinct in all its ways, culturally, morally, ethically, ritually, and socially. The people cannot merely blend in with the Middle East landscape. See, instructions are given for sacred vows, such as those of a Nazarite, a person who becomes especially separated to the Lord for a designated period of time. The priests are given a special words to use to bless the nation and call upon God's favor for each of its members. This blessing essentially puts God's name on the Israelites and causes his face to shine on them. Special sacrifices are offered to consecrate the tabernacle and its articles of worship in order to maintain the nation's unique relationship with God. In order for God's presence to be realized, the right environment must be cultivated. So this principle applies not only to the ancient Israel in the wilderness years, but also to our own lives, because our deliverance from captivity and our full experience of the promised land of heaven, we won't get to know God very well if we are not careful about where we are and how we come to him. He calls us to pursue him passionately, like a newly freed people, like the Nazarene who vows wholeheartedly to dedicate his life not to the status quo. He calls us to worship sacrificially with genuine offerings of heart, mind, and spirit, and even with material possessions. As we do, he establishes our identity completely in him. God knows this journey will involve battles, require unity and dedication, and be centered on worship. In Leviticus, he designates trumpet blast on special silver trumpets for all 3 of these aspects, committing himself to a step in and fight alongside with his people, uniting them and celebrating with them. It is significant that the Ark of the Covenant, the symbol of God's holy presence, leads the way on this journey through the wilderness, and that the tribe of Judah, whose name comes from the word praise, follows first. Now, every detail prescribed by God through Moses points towards something about God's personality, his ways, or his mission, and every faithful step along the way brings his people closer to the destination and to him.